The wind howled across the endless prairie like a lonely spirit searching for something it had lost. Dust rolled over the dry grasslands of the Wild West, and the sky hung low and gray, threatening another bitter storm. Out on the open trail rode a man most people believed had already lost everything worth living for. His name was Cole Turner, a cowboy whose heart had been shattered years ago. Cole wasn't always the silent, broken man people saw now. Once, he had a small ranch, a loving wife, and dreams bigger than the western horizon. But fate in the frontier was cruel. Raiders had burned his ranch to the ground, and his wife had died in the flames. Since that day, Cole had become a drifter, wandering from town to town with nothing but his horse, a worn saddle, and the ghosts that followed him everywhere. That afternoon, Cole rode slowly along a forgotten wagon trail, the wind tugging at his dusty coat. Something about the air felt wrong. Cowboys who survived long on the frontier learned to trust their instincts, and Cole's instincts were screaming that trouble had passed through here recently. His horse suddenly snorted and slowed. Then Cole saw it. Up ahead, scattered across the prairie like broken toys, were the remains of a wagon caravan. The closer he rode, the worse the sight became. Wagons were overturned, wheels snapped, crates smashed open. Blankets, clothes, and supplies were thrown across the dirt. The smell of gunpowder and death hung heavy in the air. Cole dismounted slowly, his boots crunching over shattered wood. His jaw tightened. Bodies. Several travelers lay motionless around the wagons. Some still clutched rifles. Others had clearly tried to run. Bandits. This had been a massacre. Cole knelt beside one of the victims, checking for a pulse even though he already knew the answer. Cold. His eyes hardened. He'd seen violence before, but this was ruthless. He stood, scanning the prairie carefully. Raiders sometimes returned to finish what they started. The wind blew harder, and then, Cole heard something. A faint sound. Not the wind. A whisper. A weak, trembling voice. Help. Cole froze. He turned toward one of the broken wagons and moved quickly, pushing aside a torn canvas cover. Underneath the wreckage, barely conscious, lay a young woman. Her dress was torn, her face streaked with dust and dried blood. One arm was trapped under a piece of wood, and her breathing was shallow. But she was alive. Cole carefully lifted the broken plank off her arm. The woman winced in pain but managed to open her eyes. For a moment, fear flashed across her face when she saw the tall cowboy standing over her. But Cole's voice was calm. "You're safe now," he said quietly. She stared at him, trying to focus. Her lips trembled. They killed everyone." Cole gently helped her sit up. "What's your name?" "Emily," she whispered. Emily Carter had never imagined the journey west would end like this. Just 2 weeks ago, she had boarded the wagon train in St. Louis, beginning a journey that was supposed to change her life forever. She was traveling west as a mail-order bride, but what no one on that wagon train knew, not even the matchmaker who arranged her marriage, was that Emily Carter was secretly one of the richest women in the eastern states. Her late father had owned massive railroad investments, leaving Emily a fortune worth over $1 million. But after his death, greedy relatives had begun plotting to take everything from her. So Emily had done something desperate. She vanished. She accepted a mail-order marriage proposal from a rancher in Montana, planning to disappear into a new life where no one would know who she truly was. But fate had other plans. The wagon train had been ambushed by ruthless outlaws 2 hours earlier. Emily was the only one left alive. Back in the present moment, Emily looked at Cole through tear-filled eyes. "You saved me," she murmured weakly. Cole shook his head. "Not yet." He glanced around the prairie again. "If those bandits come back, we're both in trouble." Emily tried to stand but nearly collapsed. Cole caught her before she hit the ground. "Easy," he said. For a moment she leaned against him, trembling from exhaustion and shock. Cole hesitated. He had spent years avoiding attachments. Saving people often meant losing them. But leaving her here wasn't an option. He sighed. "Looks like you're riding with me." He helped Emily onto his horse and climbed up behind her. As the sun began to sink below the horizon, the broken cowboy rode away from the massacre with the lone survivor in his arms, neither of them knowing that their meeting would soon change both of their lives forever. Miles away, in a small frontier town called Red Hollow, a group of outlaws sat inside a dimly lit saloon. Their leader, a scar-faced man named Briggs, slammed his whiskey glass on the table. "Search the prairie again," he growled. One of the men frowned. "You said everyone was dead." Briggs leaned forward, his eyes cold. "Everyone except the girl." The outlaw lowered his voice. You mean the one with the trunk? Briggs nodded slowly. Inside that trunk had been letters revealing something shocking. The girl on that wagon train wasn't just another mail-order bride. She was worth a fortune. And Briggs intended to find her. Meanwhile, Cole and Emily rode through the growing darkness. Emily's head rested weakly against his chest as the horse carried them across the silent plains. Why did you help me? She asked softly. Cole stared at the distant horizon. Because someone should have. Emily closed her eyes, feeling safer than she had since the attack. She didn't know this yet, but the broken cowboy who had saved her life was about to become the one man standing between her and the ruthless outlaws hunting her fortune. And for the first time in years, Cole Turner felt something stirring inside his heart again. Hope. The cold night wind swept across the prairie as Cole Turner rode through the darkness, the distant mountains barely visible under the pale glow of the moon. Emily sat weakly in front of him on the saddle, wrapped in his heavy coat. Her body trembled from exhaustion, but the warmth of the coat and the steady rhythm of the horse kept her conscious. Cole kept his eyes fixed on the trail ahead. He knew these lands well, and he also knew something else. If the men who attacked that wagon train were still nearby, the prairie would soon become a hunting ground. Emily slowly stirred. Her voice was faint. Where are we going? Cole answered quietly. There's an old cabin about 5 miles north of here. Used to belong to a trapper who moved away years ago. It'll keep you safe tonight. Emily nodded weakly. Safe. That word felt strange to her now. Only hours earlier she had watched innocent families fall to ruthless bullets. The memory sent a shiver through her body. Cole noticed. Try not to think about it, he said softly. But he knew that was impossible. The frontier had a cruel way of leaving scars on people's hearts. After nearly an hour of riding, the dark outline of a small wooden cabin appeared between a cluster of pine trees. Cole dismounted first, then carefully helped Emily down. Her legs nearly gave out, but he caught her before she fell. Inside the cabin, dust covered the floor and spider webs hung from the corners, but the place was still solid. Cole quickly lit a lantern and started a fire in the stone fireplace. Warm light slowly filled the room. Emily sat on an old wooden chair, watching the cowboy move around the cabin. With quiet determination, he brought her a tin cup of water. Drink. She took it with trembling hands. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Emily finally asked the question that had been sitting in her heart. Why do you live alone out here? Cole stared at the fire for a long moment before answering. Because people I care about don't usually live very long. Emily looked down at the floor. I'm sorry. Cole shrugged. Frontier life. But the truth was deeper than that. Years of loneliness had turned his heart into stone. Or at least, he believed it had. Emily studied the quiet cowboy sitting across from her. Despite the sadness in his eyes, she sensed something else about him, something honorable. A man who had every reason to become cruel, but didn't. After a while she spoke again. There's something I need to tell you. Cole looked up. Emily hesitated. She had kept the truth hidden from everyone on the wagon train. But this man had saved her life. You deserve to know why those men might still be looking for me. Cole frowned slightly. What do you mean? Emily took a deep breath. My name is Emily Carter, and I'm not just a mail-order bride. Cole waited silently. My father was a railroad investor in the East, she continued. When he died, he left everything to me. Cole's expression barely changed. How much is everything? Emily's voice dropped. More than $1 million. The cabin fell silent. Outside, the wind rattled the wooden walls. Cole leaned back in his chair. Well, he muttered, that explains a lot. Emily looked confused. What do you mean? Cole stood and walked to the small window. Outlaws don't slaughter an entire wagon train unless they're expecting something valuable. Emily felt fear rise in her chest again. You think they know about the money? Cole turned toward her. I'm sure of it. At that very moment, miles away, the outlaw leader Briggs slammed his fist on a saloon table. One of his men had just returned from scouting the prairie. There was a horse trail leaving the massacre, the outlaw said nervously. Briggs narrowed his eyes. One horse. Yes. And the girl. Looks like someone took her. Briggs stood slowly. Then we hunt. Back at the cabin, Emily tried to stand again but winced in pain. Cole noticed immediately. You're not riding tomorrow. But we have to leave, she protested. Cole shook his head. Your arm's bruised and you've barely eaten. If we move too fast, you won't make it 10 miles. Emily sighed. For the first time in her life, money meant absolutely nothing. All that mattered now was survival. Cole handed her a small plate of dried meat and bread from his saddlebag. You need strength. Emily ate slowly while Cole sat near the door, rifle resting across his lap. Hours passed. The fire crackled softly. Eventually Emily's voice broke the silence again. Why did you really help me? Cole stared into the flames. For years he had avoided people, avoided hope, avoided everything that could remind him of what he lost. But tonight something felt different. Because leaving you there would have meant becoming the same kind of man who destroyed my life, he finally said. Emily watched him quietly. Something in her heart shifted. For the first time since the massacre, she felt protected. Outside, the wind suddenly stopped. Cole's eyes narrowed. Silence on the frontier was never a good sign. Then his horse outside snorted loudly. Cole stood instantly and blew out the lantern. The cabin went dark. Emily's heart started pounding. What's wrong? She whispered. Cole cocked his rifle. We're not alone. Footsteps crunched in the snow outside. Low voices followed. Briggs and his men had tracked them faster than Cole expected. Through a crack in the wall, Cole could see shadows moving between the trees. 4, maybe 5 men. Briggs' voice echoed through the darkness. Come on out, girl. We know you're in there. Emily's face went pale. Cole whispered calmly. Stay behind me. The outlaw leader continued shouting. You're worth a fortune, sweetheart. No reason for anyone else to die tonight. Cole's jaw tightened. He hated men like this. Men who believed money made them powerful. The cabin door suddenly rattled. One of the outlaws tried to force it open. Cole fired. The rifle blast shattered the quiet night. The outlaw screamed and dropped to the ground. Chaos erupted outside. Gunfire exploded through the darkness. Cole moved like a man who had spent his entire life surviving. He fired through the windows, forcing the outlaws to take cover. Emily crouched behind a wooden table, terrified but watching the cowboy fight for her life. Minutes felt like hours. Finally the gunfire stopped. Briggs' angry voice echoed from the trees. This ain't over, cowboy. Then the sound of horses galloping faded into the night. Cole didn't lower his rifle for a long time. Finally he exhaled slowly. They'll be back. Emily looked at him. What do we do? Cole turned toward her. For now, we rest. The firelight slowly returned to the cabin. Emily stared at the man who had just risked his life to protect her. Why? She asked softly. Cole gave a tired smile. Guess I'm not as broken as I thought. Emily's eyes filled with emotion. In that lonely cabin on the frontier, 2 wounded souls sat quietly by the fire, unaware that the greatest battle of their lives was still coming. But something else had already begun. Trust. And maybe, something even stronger. Cole looked toward the horizon as the first light of dawn touched the mountains. Tomorrow, he said quietly, we ride somewhere those outlaws will never expect. Emily looked at him. Where? Cole smiled faintly. My old ranch. For the first time in years. Cole Turner was going home.